Module 1, Conceptual Foundations of Infrastructure and National Development. 1. Introduction to Infrastructure and Development. Infrastructure is the backbone of modern civilization. It encompasses the physical, organizational, and institutional structures and facilities that support the functioning of society and its economy. Traditionally, infrastructure was narrowly conceived as roads, railways, ports, and bridges. However, in contemporary scholarship, it has broadened to include hard infrastructure, physical assets such as transport, energy, and telecommunications, and soft infrastructure, human capital, governance frameworks, institutions, and social services like health and education. Infrastructure is no longer viewed simply as a technical asset, but as a strategic driver of economic competitiveness, political legitimacy, social cohesion, and sustainable development. Without adequate infrastructure, productivity stagnates, inequality widens, and governance legitimacy erodes. 2. Defining infrastructure in the development context. Different schools of thought define infrastructure according to varying disciplinary perspectives. Economists define it as capital-intensive, large-scale, long-term assets that reduce transaction costs and enhance production efficiency. Political scientists view infrastructure as a reflection of state capacity, sovereignty, and legitimacy essential for exercising authority and meeting citizens' needs. Sociologists interpret infrastructure as a medium through which social order, inclusion, or exclusion is structured, particularly in urban-rural divides. Development theorists classify infrastructure as a public good with externalities that drive growth and welfare, but often face underinvestment due to free rider problems. Thus, infrastructure straddles economic, political, social, and cultural domains, making it a multidimensional concept central to national development strategies. 3. Typologies of infrastructure. Infrastructure is categorized into multiple dimensions: economic infrastructure, transport systems, energy grids, water supply, ICT networks, ports, industrial zones; social infrastructure, schools, hospitals, housing, recreational centers, public libraries, cultural institutions; environmental infrastructure, irrigation systems, flood control, waste management, renewable energy systems, climate adaptation facilities; institutional/soft infrastructure, legal systems, financial markets, regulatory agencies, educational institutions, governance structures. Each category contributes uniquely to national development outcomes. For instance, economic infrastructure drives industrialization and market integration. Social infrastructure enhances human capital and inclusive growth. Environmental infrastructure ensures sustainability and resilience. Institutional infrastructure strengthens governance, rule of law, and investment climates. 4. Infrastructure as a pillar of national development. National development implies comprehensive progress across economic, social, political, and cultural dimensions. Infrastructure plays interlinked roles in this process. Economic growth catalyst, by lowering transaction costs, expanding productivity, and fostering specialization. Poverty reduction tool. Infrastructure provides rural connectivity, access to markets, and public services, reducing inequality. Urbanization and industrialization. Driver, infrastructure enables cities to emerge as growth hubs. National security and sovereignty enabler. Military logistics, border infrastructure, and cybersecurity systems protect sovereignty. Global competitiveness factor. Countries with modern infrastructure attract FDI, integrate into global supply chains, and boost export capacity. The World Bank, UNDP, and African Development Bank consistently identify infrastructure gaps as the primary bottleneck to Africa's development trajectory. 5. Historical evolution of infrastructure and development. Thinking infrastructure has undergone distinct phases in development theory. Post-colonial era, 1950s to 1970s. Infrastructure viewed as state-led investment in modernization, dams, highways, national airlines. Structural adjustment era, 1980s to 1990s. Infrastructure investment declined due to austerity and privatization policies. Globalization and ICT era, 2000s. Focus shifted to digital infrastructure and private sector-led financing. Sustainable development era, 2015 to present. Infrastructure is integrated into the UN SDGs, especially SDG 9, industry, innovation, infrastructure, emphasizing inclusive, green, and resilient models. This historical shift reflects changing paradigms in development thinking from state-dominated to market-driven to sustainability-oriented infrastructure systems. 6. The political economy of infrastructure. Infrastructure is never neutral. It is deeply embedded in political contestation, resource allocation struggles, and governance systems. Politics of distribution. Who gets infrastructure and where it is located often reflects power, ethnicity, class, or regional dynamics. State capacity. Infrastructure is a measure of government competence, legitimacy, and ability to plan and deliver on promises. Corruption risks. Infrastructure projects are susceptible to rent-seeking, inflated contracts, and elite capture. Global power dynamics. China's Belt and Road Initiative, U.S. infrastructure aid, and World Bank projects show how infrastructure is a tool of international influence. Thus, infrastructure not only builds roads and bridges, but also builds states, alliances, and legitimacy, or undermines them when poorly managed. 7. Challenges in infrastructure and development. Despite its importance, infrastructure development faces persistent challenges, particularly in developing countries. Financing gaps and debt sustainability, governance failures and corruption, regional inequality in distribution of infrastructure projects, inadequate maintenance leading to decaying infrastructure stock, environmental degradation from poorly planned projects, displacement of communities and social justice concerns. Addressing these requires integrated policy, institutional reforms, and innovative financing mechanisms such as PPPs, sovereign wealth funds, and infrastructure bonds. 8. The future of infrastructure and development. Looking forward, infrastructure will increasingly be shaped by smart infrastructure, AI, IoT, and big data driving efficiency in transport, energy, and urban planning. Sustainable infrastructure, low carbon, climate resilient systems aligned with net zero goals. Inclusive infrastructure, equity and access to services for marginalized groups and rural communities. Global partnerships, multilateral cooperation to finance transnational infrastructure corridors. Thus, the conceptual foundation of this course positions infrastructure as both a development imperative and a political economy challenge.